It's time to sit back, relax, and listen to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life will inspire, motivate, and empower you. Live your best life now. Listen, learn, think, and decide. Change your attitude, change your life. And now, here's your host, Joan Herman.
Welcome to Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. You're listening to us in your neighborhood, from coast to coast, and around the world. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Joan Herman, author, speaker, and your host. Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life brings you interviews with some of the most inspirational and influential people in the world. It's our goal to educate and empower you so you can live your best life now. Thank you for taking time for yourself, and thank you for letting us be a part of your life. We have another great show for you today. Joining me is Dr. Christine Carter, who is here to explain how by doing less, we can actually accomplish more. She offers a game plan for reducing stress and creating balance. Dr. Carter is a sociologist at UC Berkeley's Greater Good Science Center and is the author of The Sweet Spot, How to Find Your Groove at Home and Work, and Raising Happiness. Welcome, Dr. Carter. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Dr. Carter, in describing what you call the sweet spot, Deepak Chopra said, "When you are living in your sweet spot, you feel both calm and energetic, accomplished and joyful, strong and at ease." What is the sweet spot that he is referring to?
Well, he's referring to the sweet spot in my book, and that is the overlap between where we have our greatest ease or lack of resistance or stress and where we have our greatest power or strength. So, of course, this is referring to the athletic metaphor, right, where when an athlete hits in their sweet spot, it's the sweet spot is that place of maximum impact where a ball takes its most natural flight off a bat or a racket with the least resistance to the athlete or least stress on the athlete's body and the most power for the ball.
What led you to come up with the sweet spot?
You know, I have been studying happiness and well-being and also elite performance and productivity for more than a decade. And about 5 years ago, I had already been studying this for a really long time. I was very familiar with all the science, the neuroscience and psychology and sociology around elite performance and also happiness. And I found myself in the emergency room suffering from, just basically it's a culmination of 18 months of chronic infections. None of them was actually all that bad. I was just so exhausted I couldn't heal. I had had 9 rounds of antibiotics in 18 months, and there I was in the ER with a darn kidney infection of all things. So the irony of this, that I had this really successful career, which was about, being happy and enjoying your life, and also, and coaching practice, and also elite performance and productivity. I had this great family that I loved. I've written a parenting book of all things, so I was very involved with my children. But I had it all, except for the thing that mattered most, and that was my health. I could not stay healthy. So that low point, that afternoon in the ER was really an important one for me in learning how to walk my talk a little bit better. I kind of went back to all the research that I was so familiar with and road tested it in a different way in my own life, so that I could come up with basically a recipe book for how to live in my sweet spot where I could have great power and enact my real strengths, but dial back the stress and the busyness and the overwhelm 100-fold.
What you just described sounds like what so many of us experience on a daily basis. So one of the things that really piqued my interest is that you say it's possible to accomplish more by doing less. And I think that that's a great way to try to live our life. So what does that mean, and what can we learn from an olive tree, what you write about in your book?
Well, olive trees are a wonderful example. They're a great metaphor in our culture, of course, or in the world. But I come from a family that grows olives. My great-grandfather started an olive processing company, so I learned a lot about olive trees. And the thing I like best about them is they are what's called an alternate bearing crop, which means one year they don't grow very much fruit. They just grow wood. They establish the foundation for the next year when then they have a huge, almost double crop. And so this cyclical pattern of huge production and then rest and laying the foundation for what we need to produce in the next season is a great metaphor for us, because we treat ourselves like computers that can work from the time we switch ourselves on till the time we switch ourselves off and run multiple apps at the same time. But in fact, we're much more like an olive tree. We're animals. We're a part of nature. And that means that we work best in cycles. And so when we obey these natural laws about how our brains work best, we can actually be much more productive. We really can accomplish more when we're more strategic in how we go about it.
Dr. Carter, so much of how we conduct our daily life is being on autopilot. There are habits that we're not even aware of. So how do we create a new autopilot? How do we change these habits?
It's a really important piece of the ease puzzle, right? When we're looking at growing our sweet spot, we want to really increase ease in our lives. And anything that we do on autopilot has the potential to represent great ease for us. So what we need to do is learn to write the code for our brain to create the habits that we want to, the things that we're going to do every single day, we can do on autopilot, which creates great ease, and it frees up all this energy to focus on other things. So, we really burden ourselves with assigning tasks to ourselves that we don't really need to, that require willpower and self-control. And so when we learn how to write the code, you can automate something in your life and free up a whole bunch of energy.
Doctor, can you give us an example or a few strategies to help us make those changes now?
Absolutely. Here's a couple of simple ones. The first is when you make a task list, when you write down everything you have to do, a lot of times, even after you've made a to-do list, your brain keeps reminding you of the things that you have to do. A lot of people tell me, oh my gosh, I woke up so early this morning just kind of worrying about everything that I have to do. I'm so overwhelmed by this, mile-long task list that I've got going. And we used to think that that worry and that anxiety about what we have to do was our unconscious brain reminding us, helping us remember, quote unquote, what we need to do. And now we've learned that actually that's not what's at work here, and we can stop that worrying, those intrusive thoughts of what we have to do by simply telling ourselves when we're going to do something. So the next time you make a to-do list of things that you want to accomplish in the day or the week or the month, make sure you don't finish that task list until you tell your brain when you will do each of those things. And so what we found is that once your unconscious brain knows when something is scheduled to be done, then it doesn't remind you to do those things, and it frees up a whole bunch of attention. So then you can focus on what it is that's in front of you.
Doctor, what are daily micro-habits, and how can they help us?
Daily micro-habits are little things that we do automatically, like we were talking about before. So a micro-habit I have is that I take my vitamins while I'm waiting for my coffee to brew. And so basically, in any given day, you only have a certain number of decisions that you can make, or times you can resist temptation, or anytime you exercise self-control or willpower. That willpower is like a muscle in that it fatigues. And so you want to really limit the number of decisions that you're making on a daily basis. And little tiny micro habits, getting into the habit of doing one thing at the same time as another, or anything that you can, once again, put on autopilot, frees up that energy. I know a lot of people use up a lot of their daily willpower without even knowing it on things that they don't actually really need willpower for. So deciding whether or not to have your coffee before or after your shower, for example, in the morning, that's a decision you don't need to make. Make it one time and then get into the habit of just always doing it the same way, because then you free up all this extra energy.
Doctor, we're a few weeks into the new year now, and in the beginning, people make all these resolutions to make these major changes in their life, and usually by about now, a lot of those things move to the side. Is it more effective, rather than someone saying, I want to lose 30 pounds, and that's this major goal, is it more effective if they change these little micro habits? In other words, if you're trying to change your eating habits, rather than say, I'm going to not eat anything with sugar, that's a daunting task. It can be an overhaul in someone's life. But by making little micro changes, is that the way to success?
It is. It's so much better to make tiny little changes over time and stick with them than to make really big changes for a week or two and then kind of have a spectacular failure at a resolution. So instead of saying, I'm going to give up sugar in 2015, it's going to be much more effective to say, after dinner, I'm going to have 3 bites of an apple before I think about dessert, right? That's a micro habit that you can get in. It's going to really reduce the amount of dessert you actually eat, because you might feel satisfied by just having a piece of fruit. So, and that's something that is sustainable over the long term. Now, what I will say about New Year's resolutions, I love them. They're wonderful. But you're right. At this time in the year, about half of people are already really starting to give up their resolutions in earnest. It's not because you're a weak person that you haven't kept your resolution. It's that you haven't made the right resolution and you're not approaching it in a way that helps you avoid brain booby traps. So I actually, at ChristineCarter.com, have a free class, online class that you can take. I'll send you one short email every day that will help you make the right resolution and then be able to keep it for the rest of your life, not just for 2015, but these are habits that have the potential to stick with you forever.
And I think we often give up too easily. I mean, we try something here or there, a week or two. How long does it really take for a new habit to become automatic?
It's a complete myth that it only takes 21 days. We hear this all the time, and I actually use it in my class, 21 days to this, because it's a nice number to think about. But when researchers have studied how long it takes to develop a habit, they find a very wide range. So the good news is that even just the second time you do something, if you do it in a particular order with the same trigger and the same reward, you are starting to wire the neurons together that you need for a habit. So that automaticity starts to happen even just in the second day. So, every day you take towards a new habit makes it easier, really, if you're doing it in the right way. The bad news is that, hard habits to get into, like learning to exercise, take more like 66 days than 21 days to get into before they become much more fully automated.
Doctor, you mentioned the importance of saving energy, and you write about the ratio of positive to negative emotions. I want to talk about what that means, but also in our relationships, some are beneficial, some are supportive, and they drain valuable energy. So how do we get that balance between positive and negative emotions in our everyday life and in our relationships?
What we've learned is that if you can foster 3 positive emotions for every 1 negative emotion that you have in your life, there is really a tipping point that happens in your brain where your perspective is greatly broadened, you become more creative. It's as though your brain is operating on a different engine that takes less gas and has more power. So once people reach that 3-to-1 tipping point, researchers consider them to be flourishing. It's when you're really meeting your potential. You're obviously much happier, but you also tend to be more productive. It's squarely in that sweet spot. So knowing this, it's not about not having any difficult or negative emotions. Life is really difficult. We have lots of negative emotions, but it's just balancing those things out and knowing that when we're going through a tough time, we're going to be able to meet the challenges that tough time is facing us more if we cultivate more positive emotions like gratitude, taking time to really deeply appreciate what is going well in our lives, or thinking about positive emotions about the future like excitement or anticipation. What is it that we're looking forward to? What do we feel optimistic about? What's giving us confidence? Or, like you mentioned, other people, like love and compassion are two of our most powerful positive emotions in moving the needle on this tipping point. So how can you reach out to the people in your lives that are already positive forces for you, that enhance your strengths and that make your life less stressful? And sometimes the reaching out can just be to total strangers too. It's not just our friends and family that we can gain strength and ease from connecting with. It can be, smiling at somebody in an elevator and saying hello to them and chit-chatting instead of looking down at your phone. Or, really smiling at the barista and asking them how they're doing. Those kinds of positive connections are real forces for helping put us in our sweet spot in life. And we have really amazing research to back this up.
The book is The Sweet Spot, How to Find Your Groove at Home and Work by Dr. Christine Carter. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Carter, you can visit her website, christinecarter.com. Dr. Carter, in about 30 seconds or less, I want to end the show with something that's in your book. And you write to work on your eulogy and not on your resume. And I think that is so important. How can this mindset change a person's life?
Well, because it gets you thinking outside of your small little striving, achieving life, right? Mm-hmm. And thinking about what you will really be remembered for. You will not be remembered for anything like a text that you write. You won't even be remembered for the titles or the prestigious titles or the jobs you did. Nobody at your eulogy is going to say, she increased market share every single quarter, right? This is not what we are remembered for. Right. We're remembered for the things that bring real meaning and fulfillment to our lives, for the things that we connect into that are larger than ourselves. And usually that's the impact and the value that we have on other people's lives. So thinking about your own life, what are you doing right now that has real value to other people? How are you making the world a better place? What do you feel, what fires you up and makes you feel passionate? Chances are that passion and that inspiration comes from a connection to something larger than just your little individual self. And when you can tap into that sense of the bigger whole, that you're really a part of this much bigger thing than yourself, then you're squarely in your sweet spot.
Dr. Carter, thank you so much for spending time with us today.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
We'll be right back. Hi, this is Joan Herman, host of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. Did you know that Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life has a free monthly digital magazine that can be read online or emailed to your inbox? Every month, nationally recognized leaders in their field provide information to educate, inspire, and motivate you. We believe in a holistic approach to life, incorporating mind, body, and spirit. Check out a copy of Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life 24/7. Visit cyacyl.com and be sure to tell your friends. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you found the show informative. At Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, we believe that knowledge is power. Take what you've learned, apply it, and live your best life now. Remember that the information provided are the opinions of our guests and should never replace the advice of a professional who knows your personal situation. If you'd like more information, visit our website, cyacyl.com. That stands for Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life. While on the site, listen to past shows on demand, read the digital magazine, and be sure to follow the show on Facebook and Twitter. Until next time, this is Joan Herman. Thanks for tuning in.